Role of naming and labels. Studies in child psychology show that how we label a toy can significantly influence children's interests and behavior. Young children are very aware of gender labels. By age 3 or 4, most know certain toys are meant for girls or for boys, and they often gravitate towards the toys labeled for their own gender. Experiments demonstrate this clearly. If you take a novel toy and tell a group of children, "This is a toy for boys," then boys will show more interest in it and girls will shy away, and vice versa if it's labeled for girls. As one psychologist put it, "Toys are toys until we tell the child that it is for boys or girls. That gives a label to the toy, which a child will internalize." In other words, a child might genuinely enjoy a certain toy, but if they've been taught, "This is not for you," they may avoid it to conform to identity norms. This relates directly to calling something a doll versus an action figure. A boy who might secretly enjoy playing house with a doll could be swayed by the terminology. He might eagerly play with a action figure, essentially the same object in function, because that label fits his identity, whereas doll does not. Children often want to do what is right for their gender, their team, as one researcher noted, and will police themselves and each other to follow those toy norms. This self-policing can affect children's social development and self-concept. For instance, because boys are generally not encouraged to play with dolls, they get fewer opportunities to practice caregiving or empathy through toy play. One could argue this is reflected in later attitudes. Indeed, if only girls are given baby dolls, it subtly teaches kids that moms take care of babies, not dads. Analysts have pointed out that pressuring only girls to play with dolls, and not boys, can lead children to internalize the idea that childcare is a woman's role. On the flip side, girls historically haven't been as encouraged to play with toys like construction sets or action heroes, which could contribute to fewer girls pursuing STEM fields or leadership roles. A connection some researchers make, noting toys for boys often build spatial and problem-solving skills, whereas girls' toys focus on appearance and domestic skills. These correlations are complex and socially reinforced, but they illustrate how the naming and framing of a toy, doll versus action figure, can shape child behavior and even long-term interests toward more balanced play. Psychologists and educators largely advocate for offering all children a mix of toy types and being mindful of not imposing labels. There's a growing movement for gender-neutral toys, or at least marketing, that doesn't blatantly gender code items, so that children feel freer to explore. Studies have shown that when gender labels are removed or minimized, children's play becomes more varied. Kids will choose a wider range of activities when toys aren't explicitly marked for girls or boys. Over time, such changes could dilute the strict doll versus action figure divide. Already, surveys find a majority of parents are supportive of their daughters playing with boys' toys, and, to a lesser extent, of their sons playing with girls' toys. Socially, it's becoming more acceptable, for example, to see a boy gently playing with a stuffed animal or doll, especially if it's framed as developing future fatherly skills, or a girl proudly lining up her Avengers action figures. Each toy offers unique developmental benefits, and recognizing that those benefits should not be limited by gender is a key insight from recent psychological and sociological research. Marketing and branding strategies. Toy companies have been extremely influential in shaping public perception of what counts as a doll or an action figure, and who should play with each. Marketing and packaging are where the distinctions are often amplified. Terminology and branding. As discussed, Hasbro's G.I. Joe line in the 1960s famously forbid employees from ever using the D word, doll, G.I. Joe was to be sold only as an action figure. This deliberate branding created a new category of toy. Similarly, other companies followed suit. For any posable character toy intended for boys, the term action figure became standard. Meanwhile, products aimed at girls continued to be labeled as dolls. This branding bifurcation reinforced the idea that doll equals girl and action figure equals boy. The ripple effect is seen even in legal and industry classifications. For example, in the US, tariff codes at one point, dolls were defined as toys representing human beings with a higher import tax, whereas other toys, including action figures of monsters or non-humans, had a lower tax. In a notable 2003 case, Marvel Comics' toy division successfully argued that their X-Men action figures were not dolls, since the characters were mutants with non-human traits. In order to get a better tariff rate, this quirky legal battle underscores how even on the business side, there was a concrete incentive to categorize action figures separately from dolls, highlighting how entrenched the distinction had become in industry thinking. Advertising imagery. Advertising has consistently portrayed dolls and action figures in stereotypical scenarios. Doll commercials, for products like Barbie, Baby Alive, etc., typically feature gentle music, pastel colors, and little girls nurturing, dressing, or chatting with the dolls. Action figure commercials, by contrast, tend to be loud, dynamic, and cool, often showing boys making the figures fight, fly, or save the day amid explosions or sound effects. These marketing choices aren't accidental. They send messages about how each toy should be played with. By reinforcing these patterns, toy companies strengthen the public perception that dolls are about beauty or caregiving, and action figures are about action and conflict. A recent analysis of toy commercials found a stark gender divide. No girls were shown playing with action figure toys in the ads surveyed, and when boys were shown playing with doll toys, 58% of the time it was specifically an action figure, as opposed to a traditional doll. In other words, advertisers almost never depict girls engaging with action figures, and they only show boys with dolls if those dolls are the macho action kind. This continues to perpetuate the idea that each gender has its rightful toy domain. Packaging and store placement. The physical design of toy packaging and store layouts further cement the doll action figure split. Dolls aimed at girls are often packaged in pink or pastel boxes with clear plastic display windows, showing the doll and her outfits or accessories. The branding might use flowery or cursive fonts and words like friends, fashion, fun, or magic. Action figure packages, on the other hand, often have bold graphics, darker or primary colors, and action-oriented imagery, explosions, heroic poses, the character's name in big block letters. They emphasize features like kung fu grip or battle armor, rather than fashions or hairplay. In retail stores, companies historically ensured their products were placed in gender-segregated aisles, an effect that persists. A walk down a traditional toy aisle would show a blue aisle with action figures, vehicles, building sets, and toy weapons, and a pink aisle with dolls, play kitchens, and craft sets. This segmentation was so expected that many retailers didn't even need signs saying boys or girls. The color coding and product selection made it obvious. In recent years, some retailers like Target have moved away from explicit boys-girls labeling of aisles, but the product separation often still exists in practice. Product tie-ins and gendered lines. Toy companies also shape perception through the types of products they develop for each gender. For instance, if a popular movie or franchise comes out, there might be two different toy lines, a doll line for girls and an action figure line for boys. A classic example is Disney's approach. A movie like Frozen yields dolls of the princess characters marketed to girls, whereas a movie like Star Wars yields action figures marketed largely to boys. Even within the same franchise, companies may tailor the toy form to the assumed audience. E.g., Marvel or DC Comics might license out a 12-inch fashion doll of a female character for the girls' market and a 6-inch action figure of the same character for the boys' market. The branding and packaging will differ to target each demographic. An illustrative case is Lego Friends. Lego historically was marketed in a gender-neutral or boy-focused way, with themes like space, knights, etc. But in the 2010s, Lego introduced the Friends line, with pastel-colored bricks and mini doll figures, specifically to attract girls. This was essentially creating a dollified version of a building toy, marketed heavily with gender cues, friendship, baking, beauty shops, to sell construction toys to girls who might have felt standard Legos were for boys. The success of such strategies further entrenched the idea that even when the underlying play is similar, it must be presented very differently for each gender. Marketing impact. Through these tactics, toy companies didn't just reflect cultural gender norms, they actively built and amplified them. By the 1980s and 1990s, the two worlds approach to toy marketing was in full swing, Action figures were an unstoppable boys category, and dolls an evergreen girls category, each with multi-million-dollar advertising campaigns aimed at reinforcing their appeal. Peggy Orenstein, a noted author on gender and girls' culture, pointed out that this kind of segmentation was a conscious profit strategy. If you convince the public that boys and girls must have separate toys, you sell more toys, because siblings of opposite genders won't share the same set. The result is generations of kids absorbing these marketed messages. Sociologically, children's media and advertising have made the doll versus action figure distinction part of the fabric of childhood. On a positive note, awareness of these issues has grown recently. Campaigns for more inclusive marketing have led some brands to create ads showing boys playing gently with traditionally girl toys and girls in active, adventurous play. There are also female action figure marketing successes. For example, Star Wars Rey and Wonder Woman figures proved that female characters could sell well in the action figure aisle, not just as dolls. Likewise, Barbie commercials in the 2010s featured girls imagining themselves as professionals, astronaut, president, etc., with the tagline, "You can be anything," shifting away from purely fashion imagery. Still, the toy industry tends to stick with what sells, and the historical marketing playbook of pink versus blue remains influential. Parents today can easily find examples of progressive ads, but also will notice that many stores still effectively have the old pink and blue sections. In short, marketing created and maintains much of the perceived divide between dolls and action figures, even when the toys themselves sometimes overlap in form or function. May the rest of your life be the best of your life. Oran Zeta.